Hey, how you guys doing? So this video is going to be on me talking about my fantasy world, and it's a response video to this video by a guy named Rick's Creation. That's the channel's name. His video is basically called "I've spent 10 years building a fantasy world and how it changed my life." And I want to do something very similar to that because I also have been creating my own fantasy world, I believe, for around the same amount of time. So that's basically what I'm going to be talking about for the next probably 10 to 15 minutes. Um, so, one big thing is what I've realized about writing a novel, and spending so much time and effort on it, is that you can get it can become very time consuming, but at the same time not be at the same time. It's very strange. It's like one minute you might be sitting there working on it all day, every day. You're just constantly writing down pages and pages and pages, and then you realize you don't really like what you write. Or one minute you might love what you wrote. You might love the first 10 pages of what you wrote, and then the next 20 pages you don't like. Or your story starts off as something else, and then becomes something completely different and evolves and changes constantly over the months and years that you put it that you write it, that you work on it. So one thing that I remember about my novel when I first started writing it was supposed to be kind of like a taking over the world kind of thing. Basically, how it was is I was watching Hunter x Hunter. It was one of my favorite anime at the time, and I was like, I kind of want to make my own version of that. And basically, the book was supposed to be like you conquering worlds, but you don't even know if the world is real or not. So how the story started out was basically like a little boy wanting to conquer. Um, well, it's like, how do I even explain it? It's like conquering worlds, but I also basically called it like a cardio race because it's like who can conquer the most worlds the quickest. And I still might make this into a book. This might be an arc in my story that I have now, or I might make that into an entirely different book because I still kind of like the whole idea of it. However, it started off as that. The main character's name was Tapasu. I gave him like the most complicated name for some reason. Doesn't sound appealing at all. Sounds annoying. It would get on people's nerves. And the story kind of started out with him basically having like a master who trains him all the time. And I remember one scene in the book where I had it to where basically they went inside of like a parking garage, one of those big giant parking garages that you see at the mall. And basically the story was like he has a blindfold on and he has to try to escape the parking lot without like hitting a wall or making a noise or touching a car or getting a car alarm to go off or anything like that. That was like one of the first things I remember writing about. And then him also um, being at his school and exercising and staying at the school very late and exercising and getting stronger to physically be capable of doing the cardio race. And the cardio race idea, I'm pretty sure I got that from Hunter x Hunter at the beginning of the show where they're running the little race in the Hunter exams. I'm pretty sure I got that from that. And basically, what happens after that is like he trains and then he gets like a ride from his mom. They go to like the middle of nowhere because they get like a map or whatever, and then he's like by mom and he kind of stands outside. And I guess I was trying to make it really magical. So like a guy appears and he goes to the guy and stands right next to him, and they like float into the air. They just go into the air, fly off into the air, almost like it's like an invisible elevator or something. And then they're at like this desk with like this receptionist. And I talked about how sexy she was. I was like 18 or 19 writing this, so I like wrote how sexy she was and how attractive she was, and how she was like a Latina with a big booty and all this extra stuff, and how she's like a good person and all this other stuff. And then I had like this tournament. It was like kind of all over the place. It was like, so I had like this tournament going on where there's like these people fighting in a tournament. Basically, I think it was like 2 or 3 pages of them fighting in a tournament, and then it was like the building they were in was basically kind of like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, where it was like magical. So there was a small little tournament, and then they all went into this room that was really similar to the Hunter exams, or really similar to um, the tuning exams in Naruto, which is inspired by the Hunter exams, where you see all these people standing in this like office where the receptionist lady was, and basically afterwards, after they're done doing all the talking, and the tournament is over. It's like a small little tournament. Then there's like this magical freaking the wall basically it like disappears, and you can see out the wall that it's like there's like an island, right? And basically they all have to walk to the wall and like jump out of the wall, and they all fall into the water. It was so extra, and but my imagination is pretty decent because I can envision it in my head being an anime show. Um, but like they all fall into the water, and basically what happens is they're supposed to conquer this planet and become like the king of the planet. And I had like this guy who was really similar to Hisoka. Basically, he had two personalities. He had an alter ego. He was like two people combined together. It was like one guy had like bubble powers, and if he touches you with the bubble, you turn into water, and that was his power. And then the other alter ego had some other power. I can't remember what he had, but basically that was one of his powers. And I had rewrote this like so many times because I wanted him to be considered like a badass. But he wasn't like Isogi. He wasn't like on no creeper type stuff. He was just like a. He was supposed to just be like a cool badass character that was kind of creepy and kind of weird. And I remember I had wrote like a scene with him being in a bar, and these like guys try to come and like punk him and call him like weak, and call him dumb and stupid. They're like clowning him. And this is like I guess this was supposed to be like the other alter ego, and he's like sitting at a table, and basically what happens is he turns the guys who clown him into water, and he takes the cup of water and just pours it in the toilet in the bathroom, and just flushes them down the toilet, basically murdering three guys by turning them into water. I remember that being like a big scene, and I don't even have this notebook down here. It's in storage back where me and my mom and my sister used to live, but I remember that like vividly and very clearly. And then I wrote a character that was like inspired by Prince the singer, and he's supposed to be like this really cool character, and he's like the master of he's like a samurai with like a purple guitar, and I'm still gonna use him because I think he's a really cool character. He's like a master with a purple guitar, and the guitar can like change into like a sword basically. And it was like he was training these two guys that one of them was like inspired by Biggie Smalls, the other one was inspired by Tupac, but they were also inspired by Madara and Hashirama, and they're basically like they like killed each other and stuff like that. They were kind of like the Hokages or whatever. Like I said, I'm probably still gonna use them, but change them into something more unique. I can't remember the names I gave them, but I gave them like backstories. And the Tupac dude could control lightning, and the Biggie dude could like control the flow of how he fights. And then the Tupac dude really wanted to be like the Prince dude. It was like it was so much backstory I had that I like wrote down. Um, but yeah, and then it was like I think I got about like 30 or 40 pages in with that version of my story, and yeah, it was like I got to a part where they're all on the island like Hunter x Hunter, and my main character he like walks into this like abandoned city or something. It's like an abandoned ancient city where everything is made out of like dirt. And he like walks into like one of the houses, and he sees some stairs. He like goes up the stairs, and then he bumps into the bubble dude, and then they're like about to fight or something, and he's trying to like escape or whatever. He ends up escaping because he got plot armor, I guess. But that was like the first draft of my story. I don't even think it had a name to it. I think it did. What was the name, bro? What was it? What was the first name? I don't even know what the first name of the story was. Was it like Journey or Legend, or it was something like generic? But I like changed it because I think there's like a game called Legend or something like that. So I like ended up changing it to something else. I remember I did write a name for it on the front of it, but I don't even, like I said, I don't even have that notebook anymore with me right now. It's literally in storage. But then I have another notebook where I made like a different version of this story, where basically it starts out with these two assassins in the city. They're on like the top of this building, and basically they're like going around killing people. And this is it actually in my main story, but this version was like slightly different because it like starts out with the two assassins, and they're like really important in that part of the story. I've literally written my story in so many places. I have it on this computer, and then I have it on my tablet. I have like so many different versions of it. Like I had wrote a version in a notebook where it was like basically the two assassins kill all these gang members, and the original version had like the gang members have a certain color. I'm not gonna name the color because it's like a very famous gang or whatever. But they had like a very first color that they used, and then later on I changed the color to be like pink and called them like the Pink Gang or whatever, or something like that, where they all like swagged out in pink, and the two assassins fight them. And the story was like, it was pretty crazy. Like my mind was getting so deep with it. Like I'm not gonna tell any spoilers because, like I said, I might use some of this stuff still. But basically, the leader of the gang fights both of the assassins, and they like burn him alive or whatever. It's pretty dark. But I was like so invested in creating like my own anime, my own manga, my own novel type thing, and I can envision it in my head so clearly. I was like, you know what I'm saying? And it's like now it's funny because, for one, over the past like 4 or 5 years, I've had so many like changes to this story and have made the story so much deeper and so much more complex. And I've added so many more characters because I'm inspired by so much different things. And you can be inspired by so many different things. One big thing I'm inspired by is the visions that I get in dreams. If I see characters in a dream, I write that down. If I look at a person and think of a character, I write that down. If I see video game characters that I think look cool, I'll just change them a little bit and write them down, put them in the story. If I see that this character would be cool to mix with this character, I do that. Like if I see a video game character, black movie character, white movie character, and they're all cool, I'll like fuse them together and create an entirely new character, and you wouldn't even know that they're like a mix of like three different people. And then sometimes my mind will just randomly give me visions of a character. Like a character that I've recently been envisioning constantly is this girl who looks very similar to Alice from Alice in Wonderland, but she has like orangish, orange-ish, yellowish eyes that are flames. She has fire flame hair, and she runs around a forest, and she's in tears, and she has this super strong strength because when she's basically sleepwalking all the time, and she's stronger when she's sleepwalking, but she's extremely depressed when she's sleepwalking. Like she's super sad, and her brother fights the main swordsman of my story, and basically he's like, I'm not gonna kill you if you go and find my sister and find where she's at. And that's like one character arc that I'm gonna put in the story that I recently thought about because I wanted a blind swordsman whose hair was on fire. I don't know why, I was just thinking of that the other day, and then I thought of his sister later on. I'm like, why am I thinking of this? But it's just, as a writer, that stuff starts to just happen. You'll get visions of what direction you want the story to go in, and it can constantly evolve and constantly change. And it's like a puzzle, and you're trying to figure out where you want to put these characters. When is this arc going to happen? Is it going to happen in the middle of this arc? Is it going to happen at the end of this arc? Is it going to, slide into a new arc? What is the backstory for these characters? Why are they the way that they are? Etc. And of course, the more media that you consume and the more stuff that you like that inspires you, you're going to add more of that into your story. And I'm inspired by One Piece the anime, I'm inspired by Hunter x Hunter the anime, I'm inspired by DC Comics, Marvel Comics, I'm inspired by stuff like Wizard of Oz, Alice in Wonderland, things such as like, things like Harry Potter. I'm very inspired by a lot of those things. Um, what else? You know, Full Metal Alchemist, a lot of things. I'm inspired by so much things, my dreams, my nightmares, the visions I get, things that just pop into my head in the middle of the day, just out of nowhere. People I see walking around, I get inspiration from the real world. I see things in the real world, and I'm like, I could put this in my story. I get story arcs from the real world. I get story arcs from TV shows I watch. I'm inspired by Adventure Time as well. I really freaking love Adventure Time and Pokemon and things of that nature. But I can tell you that when making a story, it starts out as one thing and then can evolve into another thing. And sometimes it can get super, super duper deep. Sometimes you can get writer's block where you don't know what you want to write about. Sometimes you'll literally get a whole story arc that's envisioned in your head. I'm talking about a full 30-page story arc, but you have an arc before that you're trying to get through to get to that arc that you have in your head. But I've also realized that whatever is hitting you at the time is the arc that you want to write. Like recently, in the past 3 or 4 months, I've been writing like 3 different arcs for my book. Um, one that's like on this planet that one of my characters lives on, and then another one that is um, basically the beginning of the story. And like I said, it was like the more stuff I consumed, the more story I was adding in and creating an entirely new world. And it was just crazy because it's just like you really do start creating just this massive world. But I've also realized that it can be very fun, but it can be very time consuming, and sometimes it can be very boring. You can go through a cycle of different feelings. You could be really invested in like one part of the story, or really invested in one character, and then neglect another character, and then you have these characters, and you're like, well, these characters are a little too similar to these ones, so maybe change this up a little bit. You can constantly be thinking about story arcs, and the story arc might be a little too similar to another story arc, so you change it. You might have a story arc about one character that you want to talk about, but then you're like, this character is not really interesting enough for people to be really invested in his arc. But then you sit there and you think to yourself, well, how would you know that? You don't know if that's true or not. Somebody might really love this. Mostly white guys, you guys really love to pick things apart. So white guys might sit there and read the hell out of the story, think it's trash, but still sit there and analyze the characters and themes and messages in the story, because that's just what white guys are really, really into. Black guys might not freaking read it, but I can say that, and that might not be true. I might just be talking, because there might be black dudes who are super into it, because there are black dudes who are very highly intelligent, very wise, and very into stuff like that. I can tell you that writing your own novel is an extremely long process. I can tell you guys that. And I can tell you, you might have too many characters to the point where you don't even know where to put some of them. I probably have over 10,000 characters. In my, where is it at? In my phone notes, I literally probably have like 10,000 characters. Um, and some of them I literally got from my dreams. Like I've said, and again, my friend said this is demonic, but I used to literally talk to people. I talk to like the people in my dreams and stuff. Like I lucid dream hella hard. So sometimes they'll like tell me their name, tell me where they're from and stuff like that. And I always look at it as like, that's not demonic if they're telling you their name, where they're from, and they, you put them in your book. I see that as my thoughts and know that I want to know all that stuff. So it's like I end up going into the dream and they actually tell me this stuff. So I don't consider that like false gods or witchcraft or anything like that, like other people do. But yeah, that's just like one big thing I've realized when it comes to like writing novels. What else? Um, like I said, it's very interesting because your story can evolve into something completely different. For example, my new story is entirely different than my old one that I told you guys about. And it's funny because there was literally like I have three different copies, so it's a little. I probably have more than three, like six or seven. But it's like I have this copy where it's like I told you guys about the whole like cardio race thing. That was like the first copy, and the second copy was like with the two assassins at the beginning, and then the one I have now is just like an entirely different story, because the one in the middle with the two assassins on top of the building was kind of more straightforward, and I almost felt like I was like inspired by Naruto with the two, because it made me think of like Haku and Zabuza. But then like later on, I'm like, nah, because you start realizing that you're like getting inspiration from different areas. Like after a while, like even if you don't notice it, like right away, you start noticing it later on. Like, I think I'm getting inspired by this or this, you know. But it's just funny because when I originally made those two assassin characters, I didn't really have a story for them, and now I literally have the deepest story ever. I'm just gonna spoil it since it's like a side story. And it's literally at the beginning of the story, so it's not really like me spoiling anything. But basically, these two assassin girls killed their dad. God damn. They killed their dad because their dad was like evil and they beat their mom. So they literally killed their dad, and their dad is like a literal demon. Like one of them slits his throat, and he's literally like doesn't care. He's just kind of just sitting there chilling while he's literally dying in his own blood. Like it's like super dark. Um, and then I literally go into a story where he literally, in my story, there's hell, and he literally goes to hell, and there's a character in hell, the very first person that ever stepped in hell. His name is Nothing, and Nothing is like an emotionalist, like monster basically, and you can fight Nothing, but Nothing is in the deepest part of hell. So their dad, literally, he dies and he goes to hell, and basically he's like, he decides that he wants to go fight nothing, because they basically tell him if you can defeat nothing in a fight, then you can get reincarnated and go back to the earth, not earth, birth. That was the first name I had for it. The new name I decided to give it like a couple of weeks ago is Honeydew. I want the planet to be called Honeydew because it just sounds nice. Um, Hold on. So that's one thing. Is it used to be called Birth, but now it's called Honeydew, the planet of Honeydew. Um, and basically, this is like a filler story that I wrote. I don't know. Something told me to write it, and it's like basically he gets into hell. He has this conversation with like this old guy in hell. He's like a skeleton. It's kind of like, imagine Death Note. Like, you know how there's like all the death gods, but they're just skeletons. And basically, it's like, he tells him how it is in hell down there. He's like, man, he's like, we're all skeletons. He's like, man, we're all like thousands of years old, so we end up losing our memories. So he's like, basically like, so I like to talk when we get a new person. I like to talk to them and ask them what their life was like when they were alive and stuff like that. And they end up like chopping it up, chilling, and then he ends up telling them, what's your name? And he ends up realizing that he forgot his name, and they end up calling him, I believe it was Father. I have it on this computer, but I haven't read it in a while. So I end up calling him, I think it was Father. And basically he tells him about nothing, and he's like, oh, he decides he wants to go fight him. And it's funny because in this hell, there's like, the gladiators, they get bored, they'll like fight each other, but they don't die. It's just like they just beat each other in a fight, and then they literally heal. So it's like kind of no point of fighting, but they do it anyway. They have sex a lot and stuff like that. And the girls in hell, they have like their own area where they don't really let guys go in there. But it's funny because the old man, is basically like, yeah, the women in hell, they're different than the men down here. The men know that they're evil down here, but the women, he's like, man, the women genuinely think they're good people, and they still think they can get back to Honeydew. That's basically what he tells them. He's like, the men are straightforward, like they know they're evil and they're literally in hell. And it's kind of like I guess it's kind of like a sexist joke from him, from the old man or whatever, the old man skeleton. But basically, he decides that he wants to go fight nothing. And there's also hella, like, I have like different levels of demons. Like the basic demons are just like people that have died; they just turn to a skeleton, basically. And then there's like the knights of the of hell or whatever, where they're like different colors. Like they're still skeletons, but they're like different colors and stuff. Like they get colors. And then there's like like little ghouls and stuff like that. But again, this is like a filler side story. Like there's no main arc in hell or anything like that. But I might put one in there. Who knows? Um, but yeah, so he decides to go fight nothing. So basically, to fight nothing, you have to go to the forest. What was it? The flaming forest of death, or something like that. And then you swim in the sea of hell, and there are literally like dead fish in there. And if you get eaten up, if you get, basically it's like a trial. It's like if you get touched by any of them, you have to start all the way over again. And it takes a really long time to get down there to the the darkest part of hell to fight nothing. So bro like tries, and then he ends up losing to nothing like 10,000 times. But like all you have to do is beat nothing one time, and you can get reincarnated. That's basically how it is. And it takes him like forever to actually finally get to him, because he gets eaten up by the dead fish and all that stuff. It was just like a weird little story. I was like, I don't know why I like thought of this, but I liked it because I wanted him to be evil, and I wanted there to be a backstory for the two assassin girls, and I wanted it to be like something unique and interesting. So he's just kind of character. He's just like a side character in the story or whatever. But yeah, um, that's my little experience, of being young and writing a story. And that's just a side story, but I have the main story. I'm not gonna tell too much of it, but very inspired by One Piece. I have my main character. Remember, I told you his name was Tapasu in the original version. His name is Top now. It's just really simple. It kind of reminds me of Gon. I just like him having like a three-letter name. It's very simple. And then he has a friend. His name is Yowai. And Top is kind of inspired by me, but inspired by Sonic a little bit too. And then I guess a little bit Gon, like slightly, when it comes to the color of the clothes he's wearing. But I also did two different versions of him. where it was like one of his style of clothes was like inspired by Steven Universe, where he has like a blue jacket, light blue jacket, it has like a star in the middle. But then I had like another pair of clothes where it was just like him wearing green, where it's like gone. And then like Your is inspired by Kid Gohan, Killua, and Tails, because he's like Tails because he's very inventive. You know, he makes planes and stuff just like Tails, but he's like Kid Gohan because he has an extremely big potential, which is kind of the same for Killua. But he also has like that murderous intent, assassination kind of intent, like Killua does. And I have a swordsman. I just updated him again because I always update my characters. He's basically the sword hunter. It's kind of like a pirate hunter Zoro, but mine is the sword hunter. He's the cursed sword hunter. So anybody who's evil, he literally beats them and takes their sword. He just hunts the swords and he puts them in his backpack. So he has like multiple swords that he uses. It's pretty cool. But yeah, he's gonna verse the blind flamed hair swordsman. That's one of the ones he's gonna verse. Even though the strongest swordsman in my verse is literally a black woman with a sword. She's literally the coldest swordsman. And I might have her be like the daughter of the flame hair swordsman too. Who knows? I might have her as like one of his daughters. I feel like people would like that. But yeah, so that's just my little experience. I've built this world for years, and I have so many notebooks of this world, and I have so many different places in this world. And over the years, it's gotten bigger. You know, I even have like a little map. I think it might be in the box over there, or it might be in my wallet. So I was like carrying it around for a while, but I might have put it back in the box, or I might have put it in the wallet. I'm not sure. It's probably in the blue backpack I have over here, but it's heavily inspired by like Sonic's world and Hunter x Hunter's world, One Piece world. It's like a mix of all of them, like kind of combined together. Cause it's like an extended world. It's basically like what if every anime character and every superhero, all the different Sonic characters, all the different characters, what if they all, you know, lived in the same one world? What if the One Piece characters, the Mortal Kombat characters, and Rick and Morty characters, and Adventure Time characters, all them? What if they all lived in one world? That's basically how my world is. You know, I have characters like the Lich. I have characters um, like Luffy. I have characters like Law. I have characters like Scorpion from Mortal Kombat. I have characters like Dante and Virgil from Resident Evil. I'm not Resident Evil. Devil May Cry. You know, stuff like that. It's like I have a lot of characters that are like inspired by like a lot of those different characters. You know, it is what it is because it's just fun to do that. But I remember watching, you know, the guy just said, hold on a second, you guys. Like I said, I remember watching Rick's Creations, and I remember him telling me, like, all, not him telling me, what am I talking about? Him talking about all the different things he's inspired by. Like, he's inspired by, like, Game of Thrones. He's inspired by Avatar The Last Airbender. I'm also inspired by them, too. He's inspired by Avatar with blue people. I'm also inspired by them, which is hilarious. Like I have characters that are literally inspired by them. But like I said, my characters are more inspired by like Hunter x Hunter, One Piece, and Adventure Time. Those are like three of my very big favorite series of all time, especially One Piece and Hunter x Hunter. Hunter x Hunter and One Piece are my favorite anime of all time. Adventure Time is my favorite cartoon. And so is a regular show. I love Rick and Morty, but I wish there was more episodes of Rick and Morty. I don't feel like there's enough episodes of Rick and Morty. um, but yeah, a lot of my stuff is like inspired by pretty much anything I think is cool. Um, but yeah, like it's very inspired by the big three, like Bleach, One Piece, Naruto. Very inspired by them as well. Um, so yeah, and it's inspired by Harry Potter. It's inspired by like Discworld. Like it's inspired by a lot of stuff. Wheel of Time. It's inspired by pretty much all those things, which lets you know how big the scope is and how big the world is. Trust me, it's a huge world. But like I said, I constantly be putting in more story arcs to it, which can be like a good thing and a bad thing. It's like a double-edged sword because it means that I have to put more time and effort into writing it. But I do love it, and I do love having like a giant cast of characters to kind of play with. You know, writers aren't going to say it, but they kind of like to be able to play God with their characters and decide what the characters do, if we're being honest. And it's like crazy how deep we get into our characters. Like, we'll dream about our characters, we'll get deep into their minds and think about what they dream about, think about what they think about their personality, what's their zodiac sign, how old are they, what species are they, how tall are they, how do they talk, how do they walk, how do they feel most of the time, what is the attitude that they mostly have, what is their hair color, their hairstyle, how big are their ears, how big is their nose, how big is their mouth, what's their sexuality, you know, was there horrible things that happened to them as a child? Were there good things that happened to them as a child? Did their mom die? Did their dad die? Did they live with their grandma? Are they still are they kind of disabled? It's just like all these different things that you give your characters. What's their style of clothes that they like to wear? Because everybody is different, and I don't really want all my characters wearing like similar clothes. It's just stuff like that. Small little details. Are they a loving person? Are they a hateful person? Are they evil? Are they manipulative? Are they conniving? Stuff like that. But I've learned over the years that you can. There's a big thing called I call it. What was it? What did I call it? Hold on a second, guys. Flashback inception. This is something I want to talk about because I started talking about all the things about the character. You do want to be careful with going into flashbacks too hard. Where you get flashback inception, which is similar to Inception, the movie. That's where I get the term. Where basically it's like your characters are constantly going into flashback, flashback to flashback to flashback to the point where you're like 7 flashbacks in. Like, I feel like you kind of might want to avoid that, but at the same time, who knows? You might be able to do that and balance it out and do it the way you want to. I would always say write your story how you want to, because writing should be a sense of freedom to me. It should be a sense of funness first, and a sense of freedom, excitement, and enjoyment. And then it's like you kind of write your story based around those things, because you want your characters to be interesting, cool. You want to like the setting you're writing about. You want your story to be deep, possibly complex. Everybody has their like little rules they have for their story, and how they envision their story to be, which surprisingly it's actually hard to make your story be the exact way you want it to be, because you might not be able to explain how you want things to go in the exact words that you want them to work. Sometimes it's hard to describe what it is that you want the characters to do. For example, the powers that I give some of my characters might be hard to sit there and explain and describe, and a lot of people hate info dumps, but it doesn't really matter. But it is what it is. It is one of those things that you'll be like constantly thinking about all the time as a writer. You'll be constantly thinking about the fact that like when I create a character, I have a way of how I see them in my head, and I might describe them that way on the paper, right? But even though you describe it that way, somebody might envision your character differently in their head. That's what's crazy. So you might, like I might say, the chick from, like I was saying about one of my female characters, she's supposed to kind of look like Alice from Alice in Wonderland a little bit, and some people would envision her to look exactly like Alice from Alice in Wonderland. When in reality, I'm just saying her face would slightly look like hers, just a little bit. Because that's how I envision her, and I envision her being this like adorable, you know, girl, even though she's like violent, but she's not like purposely violent, and she's not like a little kid. She's not like 10. She's like, I think she'd probably be like 16 or somewhere around there, 15, 16 kind of thing going on. Or maybe even 18, 19, but just short. So honestly, I don't really want my characters to all be like underage. Like every character doesn't need to be like 13. Like they always do that in shows and stuff, in movies. But it's like every character doesn't have to be super young. But this is just kind of my version of his story, and I'll tell a lot more later on. I'll make way longer videos and way more videos. But if you guys like this, like, comment, subscribe. If you want to know more about my story, comment down below. Peace and blessings. I love you guys. Take care. Have a